Hello everyone, my name is Claudia Augustin, and this video is on the language and education policies for English language learners. As I went through the readings for the week, there was a couple of things that I learned, and one of the first things I learned is that the United States has a long history of language diversity, and the federal involvement in education is something that recently spiked. And I learned that the federal government has a really big interest on making sure that the country has well educated citizens. And I also learned that um, they want these citizens to be able to fully participate in um, democratic society. So they want to make sure, and I also learned that they want to make sure that they're able to get good jobs so that they can pay taxes. Yeah, that is one of the things that I learned from the reading. And also in the reading under Title III, Language Instruction for Limited English Proficient and Immigrant Students, I learned that the federal law requires only LEP students be placed in language instruction education programs. And as I was reading through the readings, I saw that they defined what these programs are or what the courses are supposed to be like. And they said that um, it's when like a limited English proficient child is placed for the purpose of developing and attaining English proficiency. So pretty much they're placed in these classes so they can be proficient in the English language. Um, Also, I saw that they make instructional use of both English and the child's native language. So it's not like that they'll just only be learning English and they'll forget their native language. They make use of both. So that way they strengthen the child's native language and they're helping them be proficient in the English language. All right. After reading the part about the evolution of federal policy for ELLs, I'm able to think back and I remember seeing the word segregated. Now, when I thought about segregation, I just kind of tried to figure out how did that relate to these children who, were not proficient in English. But as after reading the article and reflecting back, I saw that these children were placed into these classrooms where they would either have to sink or float. They would have to make their own, find their way out. And I just found that to be very interesting because I never looked at it like that. These children were put into these regular classrooms and they weren't I feel like they weren't ready to be in those classrooms. So they either had to, stay afloat or they sink to the bottom and they just not make it. That was one point that I found to be very interesting. Um, yeah. All right, so to continue, um, as I was going through the readings, under the section titled Equal Educational Opportunities for ELLs, it talked about a Supreme Court case. Um, it was Lau versus Nichols, and the decision from this case was regarding the education of language minority students. This case was brought um, forward by Chinese American students in the San Francisco Unified School District. So pretty much they were arguing that they were placed in mainstream classrooms and they felt that that wasn't right and they weren't treated equally because they were put into either to sink or swim pretty much, and they felt like there was no equality, and they were treated um, pretty much they were placed there to just fend for themselves. They felt like that wasn't fair because they didn't know the language or they weren't proficient in the language. They just had to pretty much go in the classroom and just find their way out, and they found that not to be fair at all. All right. So to continue, I also learned that the Office of Civil Rights used this Supreme case and the decision that was made to go after these type of districts who were doing that, who were ignoring the needs of these LEP students. And this case played a big role, and it was a very big impact on these school districts that were like that. All right. As I continued to read through the readings, I saw that no state, it was decided that no state was allowed to deny educational opportunities to an individual on account of his or her race, color, sex, or their national origin or the native language that they spoke. This sort of brings me back to when I was in middle school, and I was really able to connect with this because I remember being in the classroom and having that those couple of kids who really didn't speak the language, so they kind of just sat in the back of the classroom. And I kind of always wondered, if they don't understand, why are they in this class? Like, why are they here? And I remember one of the little boys saying, my mom, I was able to speak Creole with him, and he would tell me like his mom didn't want him in a class where where the class was irregular. He wanted him to be in a class where he could be with other kids who speak English, because she thought like because they spoke English, that he would it would be easy for him to learn. But in reality, he was actually struggling because he felt like not only was he scared to communicate, he really didn't understand. So after seeing that there wasn't really any progress being made, he finally had got to be transferred out. And then the next school year, he was back in class with me, another class that I had, and he was doing much better. But because he got the proper help that he needed, and they had the proper provisions for him, he was able to do much better and not just sit in the back of the classroom and just sink to the bottom and just feel like, oh man, am I ever gonna get out of here? So yeah, I was able to connect with that. All right, to continue, as I was going through the readings, I saw that there was a section talking about language policy at the local level. Found this to be very important, and I pretty much learned a lot about it. So, the federal and state policies for ELLs raised a lot of awareness. And with this language policy, the teachers, the staff, they all came together to form a commitment. So, with this commitment, they would be intended to focus on the areas of concern for these students, and they would provide the proper provisions that the students needed. They would also monitor the policy and make sure that they're always keeping up with the policy so that these children can get the proper treatment and education that they needed. All right, so to pretty much summarize, the Bilingual Education Act of 1968 was revised many times, and after revising, the goals became greater. They had different goals for the program, and these students were supposed to be served, and the programs were supposed to be eligible for federal funding. Um, these readings touched based on the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and the No Child Left Behind Act makes it clear that whatever programs the district chooses to offer, they must make sure that the ELLs learn English as quickly as possible. So it was very important that they would be keeping up with the students and making sure that they're learning what they needed to learn to acquire the language as quick as they could so they can use the language. All right, so the No Child Left Behind Act brought a lot of attention to the linguistic and academic needs of these type of students. They were holding the schools accountable and make so that they can ensure that these students were learning English and learning the academics that they needed to learn. I really I liked reading this article because there were some things that I didn't know that I got to learn, and it's interesting to see how these kids really had to learn the language as quick as possible. You know, it kind of raised some questions for me, like what if they were going too fast? Like, were the children keeping up with their, were they at the right, what was the pace okay for them, or like what was more important? Was it them learning English or were them actually acquiring the knowledge? Well, that was my video discussion for this, and I really hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching.